2 slides in Timbabe who say meet me. I share my slides not quickly. The only thing I do not like about sharing slides is it starts Michelle, it starts with giving me feedback. Okay, Pacho, hold on. No. Now me share way. Okay, Pacho, be who me slides.
Yeah, Dr. Yehupa.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the feedback. I'll focus on mental disorders and as a mental illness. But there are some few things I would like to, foundational things I would like to get out of the way even before you starting common. The first thing is mental disorders are real. I say it's real because one in 8 of us in the world experience some form of mental disorders. And as I talk about mental disorders, they are acute phase and they are non-acute phase. If I say acute phase, where the symptoms are real, to me who said this person needs help, or the symptoms are severe, any acute phase. Most of us live with mental illness. You can function and you will not need any medication, don't need therapy. But when it starts disturbing your activities of daily living, when it starts disturbing your life, your living, that is when people actually seek help. That is so. The first thing is mental disorders is real. I say so because there is now so much around us. Menewuka say, Yasoriba Baako, just last week was in a severe acute anxiety and depression. I've never known this lady to actually have this. And that was the first time. She turns 30, I think, in some few weeks' time. And that was the first time ever, to the point say she could not drive, she could not do anything. She called me, we were able to walk through things. I'm not a medical doctor, my background is in nursing. But we were able to walk through certain things because Okohun doctor, no, even the sad thing is because we seek help late, and I say we seek help when we are in the acute phase. Sometimes you cannot even process what people are telling you or what the doctor is telling you because everybody will agree. Okohun GP, within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the GP is done with you. Watch out 15 minutes. Okohun psychiatrist, only watch out 45 minutes. And if you are in the state, the acute phase of the symptoms are, sometimes processing information is so difficult. It's just like telling somebody, say, when you're depression, you can exercise. So sorry that when you say depression, never chill. When the person has not got any energy to actually wake himself up from bed and do a walk. That is how crippling mental illness is. So mental illness is real. 2, it is pervasive. It's all around us. 1 in 8 of us globally is living with mental health. 1 in 5 of us will experience mental health before we just that it is all around us. And around this time, it's even getting worse. Just last week, one of the areas I'm here, Juma Honum, a young man, 24 years, went to see his counselor, shot the counselor, or for therapy, no, woman. The woman is about 49 years and okun. If you can check it out, Skagit County. It is so real and it's getting worse by the day. I know several places have declared states of emergency. In the US, they've declared an epidemic of loneliness. I'll talk all about it as we move on. But mental illness is real. Mental illness is pervasive. The third one I'll also mention is you cannot separate mental disorders or mental illness from your physical illness or physical illness. The two are one and conjoined. If you are not doing mentally well, you will not be physically well. If you are physically compromised, your mental health will also suffer. Those are the few foundational pieces I would like to. And the other one I would like to add is early intervention, early diagnosis, better prognosis. All the Nami Kenyan say, let's take our mental health seriously. Don't wait till you are not well before you start paying attention. Don't wait to have such discussions. Oh, Chama, what's that? Who say, you're boy, come on. To Women's Ministry, I applaud you for having this conversation. Let us keep an eye on our mental health. Let us care for each other's mental health. You know, sometimes we wait till things to happen before we react. If we plan and integrate a way of living that takes care of our mental health, we will not need the acute interventions that you sometimes it is not just costly. And the cost of the care, no, but your time and the damage it will do to your family and to the relationships important to you is irreparable. Let me give you one example. This 30-year-old girl I met with acute anxiety and depression last week, where she felt like ending her life. This is a Seventh-day Adventist, grew up in the church, God-fearing. But she was in an acute state that she was scared she was going to kill herself. So scared. She was so terrified, crying, weeping. And as I spent time listening to her story and listening to where she's coming from, I discovered a significant amount of childhood trauma. And this trauma was perpetrated by people within the confines of the home and the church. Okay. And I say so because if we have the awareness, if we educate ourselves and we get to learn more about this, we will take care of each other very well. Because sometimes the distraction is done by people not knowing any better. It's by people ignorance. Let me put it that way. Ignorance is not a good excuse. Okay. This is 2024, 21st century. Ignorance is not a good excuse, but people still are ignorant. Okay. As I was thinking about all the things I can speak about mental illness, as I said, it's a broad subject. Whether I speak about mental illness, mental well-being, or you get a concept when you are in tune with yourself. Okay. I'll just broadly talk about all the major mental illnesses or the major groups of mental disorders. And then after, I will dwell on a topic that I think permeates through all these disorders. So let me take you around really quickly. Anxiety disorders. What am I referring to? You know what anxiety is. Let me give a crude definition of anxiety disorder. So I'm talking about all the major big groups of mental illness. Let me put it this way. If we were to talk about health, and let's talk about stomach disorders, your ulcers, I'm talking about major mental disorders. I hope it makes sense to you. But anxiety disorders are disorders of with anxiety predominant. Anxiety is, or it's usually it is the restlessness, the fear for no good reason. You do not have any, even if you have a good reason to be anxious, that anxiety is determining or having an outcome on you that you do not want. Am I making sense? Anxiety to a certain degree is good. If we were not anxious, we would not survive as a species. Anxiety kakra and a mawu get very cautious when you are driving. It is the anxiety, that healthy dose of anxiety and the mawu idea so you don't fail the exam. But when it becomes overwhelming to the point that you break into sweat, you cannot focus, it becomes a disorder. Am I making sense so far? So what am I referring to as anxiety disorders? Obsessive compulsive disorder is an anxiety disorder. So check it down and see atum. Okoba, no atum. There's a lot of always now cleaning hand doors because you are worried about germs. COVID trim and trim, there's still COVID, there's stuff like that, but you are so preoccupied with obia free abontin ba to the point to say so be befios is here no one running not be so be you will flip. Let me put it there. You just lose it. Those are OCDs. There are phobias, and phobia is usually defined as I've just gone blank. Phobia, irrational fear for an object, for a situation, for an event. Obi on my just scared of dark places. Obi on who wa obi who spiders are. There are so many phobias. So there's social phobia, there's fear of heights, fear of certain animals, fear of insects, all those types of phobias. Anxiety disorders now. There are a whole lot of other anxiety disorders. But for the brevity and time, no, let me move on quickly. So we have depressive disorders. Depression is the most all the disorders now, listed. Depression is the most common form of mental disorder. It was anticipated in by WHO said by 2020 to be the leading cause of morbidity, sickness in the world. And I think it is. It is top there. And what is the signs of depression? There are clinical symptoms of depression. I know that people use depression as a colloquial. Oh, my depressed, and I say when you don't feel well. But there is clinical signs of depression. The locks, anxiety, having anxiety is part of the symptoms of depression. Anhedonia, lack of interest in doing anything. BBM does not give you meaning in life. Thinking of ending your life. Your friend sleep disturbance, because some people who are depressed sleep more, some sleep, but your sleep is disturbed. That's why you sleep disturbed. You be no depressed, don't mean that. Or be depressed, don't mean that. Or that's to me keep himself awake. Appetite also disturbed. Obi who your depression, when you're in depression, obi didi sa, obi also to me didi. A lack of sexual appetite, libido, is associated with depression. A whole lot of clinical symptoms are mentioned. If you have a prolonged period of about 2 weeks, is you can qualify, but you must be diagnosed for every one of these disorders. You must be diagnosed by a doctor. Now read the book and can say, hey, I think I've got depression. It's a clinical judgment. There are tools that can help the clinician or can help you know you are depressed, but they have to have a whole clinical picture. You cannot just read the tool and give you the diagnosis. Some doctors do or some clinicians do, but the right clinical approach is that it's the clinical judgment that based on you meeting certain criteria and we understanding your story, we give you that diagnosis of depression. So me, anxiety disorders, ni depressive disorders are, I have covered over 80% of all mental disorders. Anxiety, ni depression disorders. Then we come to bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is having two major symptoms. One is the depression and the other one is the mania, and swinging between the mania and depression. I've given you the clinical signs of depression. Let me give you some clinical signs of mania and hypomania. Mania, you have an exaggerated thought of self. Hopefully, so you'll be when you are nobody. You have some increased energy. You have increased sexual appetite. You have do not have a desire to sleep. All these are clinical signs of mania. When you swing between these polar ends, we call it bipolar. And depending on how much mania you have, within a specific time, we will diagnose you whether it's bipolar 1, bipolar 2, or manic depressive. There are types of bipolar disorders. Okay, moving on, post-traumatic stress disorders. This is informed by having a traumatic effect or traumatic event in your life. And what is trauma? We will talk about stress moving on. So I'll quickly jump on and talk about schizophrenia disorders. The schizophrenia disorders is marked by psychosis. And let me break down what psychosis is. Psychosis have got three key issues. One is positive signs of psychosis. Two, negative signs of psychosis, and are cognitive issues associated with psychosis. Now, let me talk about positive signs of psychosis. For positive signs of psychosis, we are looking at two things: the presence of something that you did not have, like hallucinations. Hallucinations is a perception that is not real, but you are actually perceiving it. Let me break it down. So obi kasa say make us say ote wasun, so me make verbal sounds, stimuli, which the goes through your eardrum, triggers some cells, it goes to your brain. Yes, there's visible sounds. For somebody with schizophrenia, on obi and kasai, there's no stimuli entering the ear, but or not somebody with hallucination. But ote so binene kasa. And usually the nature of the voice that he hears or the sounds that he hears are disparaging. Obi can want some yeah on background insult Obi because some people actually hear people singing all the time. And I be those are hallucinations, and you can hallucinate in any of your five senses. But the two common ones we know are auditory hallucination and visual hallucinations. That is well known for schizophrenia. That is not to say that you cannot have tactile hallucination and other hallucinations. Yes, but the common ones we know for schizophrenia is those. So the positive symptoms is hallucinations. The other positive symptom is delusions. Okay, delusions is fixed false beliefs, and that today about 5 delusions. Um, uh, Grandiose delusions. So Felicia, you'll be on your Felicia, you are the king of the world, wherever. Eric to you have some. Yeah, hold on. It's okay. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Ejumemina Obi. Yeah, there is other um uh, uh delusions about there are 5 other delusions, but basically delusions are fixed false beliefs. What else? Yes, and there is some cognitive issues and also lack of interest in doing stuff associated with schizophrenia. There are types of schizophrenia. There are types of schizophrenia. And also, even within depression, I say there are types of depression. There are psychotic depressions. So you can experience some psychosis with your depression too. Eating disorders says it all. There are about 4 main types of eating disorders. Those who do not feel the need to eat, those who eat too much, that anorexic, bulimia, all sorts of eating disorders, but it's disorders associated around your feeding. Then we've got disruptive behaviors and the social behaviors. And then why manipulative, he plays into people, malingering, and all those personality disorders. And he just enjoys seeing people suffer. The eja akotu baby there's whole so obi can say yeah some people have used this term, and please do not take it that they have thought processes and social processes that is not consistent with the main society. For all mental disorders, it has a social component, because what we may deem as mental disorders in our culture may not necessarily be a mental disorder in certain society. Let me give you a typical example. In Ghana, if your loved one I say you are expected to mourn for a year wearing black and you must remain somber in certain ways. Ahanum or ye 2 months, 3 months, move on. Black. So there are certain cultural elements that you have to understand. That is why mental disorders, you must have that approach at looking at it also. Make sure there's a cultural content, and there's a clinical judgment, not by using just tools and go with it. And the last big group These are the big groups. There are other groups of mental disorders, sleep disorders, sexual disorders, your DSM-5 disorders, but these are the big ones. The last disorders is the neurodevelopmental disorders. That is where we have the autism spectrum disorders and things that, these are disorders that are associated with you developing either from embryo level and not being able to speak, not being able to understand social cues in this animal. So this is a broad. I just flew through the major way mental disorders. So if we talk about mental disorders, it's very broad, very, very broad. Okay, one thing I have observed over the years is throughout all mental disorders, there's a common factor. In such a public lecture, Mayes is saying, there's a common factor that really impacts mental disorders, a stress. And that's what I'll focus my few slides on. Stress actually can trigger mental illness. Stress, when it is chronic, when it is traumatic, can impact mental illness of your children. Stress, when it's chronic and it is also way traumatic, can impact people around you in ways that can trigger their mental illness. So I will focus on stress. It's something you can do something about. We can postpone our diagnosis of having a major mental disorders by watching our stress and how we deal with stress. Obi Onuma, he's not experienced any BB whilst he was growing up, any traumatic event. But the stress of your grandparents through research, I'm talking about major traumatic events, major stressful events, can be passed on from generations to generations. And that is what I want to, if for nothing at all, you have to take care of your mental health for the descendants that will be coming after you. That is my point. If you have nothing, or if you are okay, any mental, life is good for you, everybody around is good for you, protect yourself. That's one of the best gifts you can give to your next generation, those who come after you. Okay, so what is stress? I wrote some few definitions here as to what stress is. I'll just like to highlight that stress itself is not bad on its own. You need a little bit of stress, just like anxiety, to function. But usually, the same thing is just like water. You know that water is good. Water keeps you hydrated. Water helps send nutrients to your body. It's a medium for transporting all the necessary nutrients you need. But water, when you drink it excessively, can kill you. And I know people who have died of water intoxication because your electrolytes get imbalance. You can trigger heart attack, and there you go. Okay, so stress, yes, a little bit of stress helps our survival. But as human beings, we have known from now research, say traumatic stress, chronic stress can actually trigger mental illness, can be of not a good thing into your mental health well-being. Can we do something about it? I believe we can do something about it. I will not read. Yes, let me talk a little bit more about stress. Stress is subjective. It is what you deem your stress is. What Shiobia Okacho said, driving from here to here, he's so stressed about it because this summer I saw drive to Alberta. I said this winter I said I have to drive to Alberta to take my kid to school to visit the family. I'm so stressed about it. For some people, driving to Alberta is the most loveliest thing they can ever think of. Okay, so stress is very subjective. It's not easy to measure stress. That is why we do not have firm research to talk about this the way that will show there's some evidence. So it took 50 years. Let me put it took 50 years to correlate smoking cigarettes and its cancer causation. Okay. So for that, may I sure say if you watch movies, you see doctors smoking with their patients. There were hospitals that doctors are smoking with nurses, they are smoking with their patients because there was no hard evidence to show that there's a causal and effect relationship between smoking and cancers. I think we are in the same state with stress. We have very limited data and knowledge to talk about the causal effects relationship between stress and mental disorders and stuff and our physical illness. We know there's a relationship, but we do not have. Some people will say yes, there's causal evidence, but you know how the body of science works in terms of what is evidence and what is not evidence. Yes. So stress has positive, negative effect. It's not easily measurable. Can we prevent it? It's ubiquitous. It's all over us. The duration and frequency impact. Can it be acute? It can be chronic. It can be traumatic. There's a difference between traumatic stress and acute stress. I don't know when you get to Q&A time, somebody can ask me, I can break it down further. Yes, what is the nature of stress? Results in overwhelming, excess one's ability to cope or integrate emotions. You feel your safety, your dignity, your agency is being impacted. It can be individual stress, it can be collective stress, it can be systematic stress, it can be historical stress. I can give you examples of so okay, stress now is a say you know macha me point you mana me free hanum na bobe is a 7. There's an individual stress that I may have driving, leaving this building late. I know people leave here around 6:30. Collective stress is having, say, USCC have observed certain racialized groups feel stressed with the elections coming up. If you are from Puerto Rico and listen to some of the comments that some of the presidential candidates are saying or voicing out, you will be stressed out. That's collective stress. Systemic stress, I think, a typical example would be Black people, and they are living in North America. Another example of systemic stress will be our First Nations people and their existence in Canada or in North America, you know, they also have that historical stress. Then there is this group of stress that we call the adverse childhood experiences or ACEs. I wish I could spend more time about it, but we need time. I want to give more time for questions and answers. But adverse childhood events are traumatic events that happen before your 18th birthday. It can happen in vitro before a birthday. And what are some of that events? Having a family member incarcerated or having mental disorders or using substances is an ACE or an adverse childhood event. Living in being exposed to any form of neglect. And neglect, that is our worst. SDA4, we are not, I can say SDA4, usually there's no abuse, but I neglect, I'm just saying as it is. And neglect is, it can be sexual neglect, it can be physical neglect, it can be emotional neglect. And neglect is just not attained to the person's psychosocial needs. Obi on ne ba ɔne ne yere te woyɛ na deɛ ɔmbu ɔnka hwɛ o ɔngyes ɔne nkasa mbua o yɛ aduane ondi. That is neglect. That's neglect. Akwadaa bi wɔ hɔnom a wayɛ adeɛ ne maame ayɛ adeɛ ne bu efu nti wo papa ɔte fie you never hug akwadaa no. That's neglect. Umbu no wonyɛ ne hwee woma ne aduane di, but because of ne maame ho ebufu nti you cannot give a hug. That's neglect. Abuse, I didn't say SD for any idea. I've heard several reports of abuse. Okay. Physical abuse is the one people know a lot. That's where you say, and that's where you in Papua, where you be there before. Even whether for reason or not, you have no business. Nobody has changed because of lashing and corporal punishment. Me, Mishano, me fine. But I don't think I changed because I changed because of my mom's prayers. Okay. So that is some of those ACEs. So abuse, any form of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, I can name all, but these are all ACEs. This and normal making things we could spend a whole week talking about and we will not finish. So, what are the signs and symptoms of stress? This is one of the most difficult slides, and please, please, please pay attention to this because sometimes people do not understand what stress does to your body and how everybody reacts to stress very differently. I had a family friend that called me about migraine. She's had migraine for years. Family doctor did not do medication, so they don't know what's the cause of this migraine. It comes, sometimes it comes, it goes. And I spent some time talking to Unpakron, Felis when you cancer or go for MRI, BBN. The body keeps the score. The body keeps the score. Know your body. It took me over 30 years to realize when I'm stressed. And I don't mind sharing it with you. But one of the best things you can do for yourself is know when your body is stressed. Unexplained diarrhea. Unni meduane a odi jollof na odi nenoa na odi all of a sudden when your diarrhea unni baby odi memfa nhyɛ bibia your body is responding to stress. You have unexplained aches and pains. Even if you say OD 40 starting aches and pains, patch OD 40 your stress becomes small. And you'll be under the 40 is then your aches and pains. Unexplained chest pains, and the young men in Ghana now. We're starting your chest pains, and then your better so no, hypertensive medication. Watch your stress. Any doctor would like to have a cheap way, give you medication and go 5 minutes, 7 minutes. And Juma, unexplained exhaustion. Ejuma da you don't lift drugs, you don't there are a lot of people who are not sleeping, and they are not sleeping not because they are not sleeping because they are stressed out. What investments be anko crypto anko dizziness, shaking, high blood pressure, muscle tension, jaw clenching, stomach, digestive problems. And now we now explain that heartburn. No heartburn. Watch they don't want to hear anything about sexual intimacy. It's just now painful, boring, everything. Watch your immune system and check no in your flu. That now so unexplained rash. Missy, what your body keeps the score. If you are in tune with your body, you will quickly know that stress is playing a huge role. That is one way of keeping care of your mental illness. When stress becomes chronic and acute and unaddressed, now those symptoms now when now about warning turns into this autoimmune disorders, infertility, cancers, diabetes, alopecia, hair loss, heart diseases, hyper and hypothyroidism, obesity, sexual dysfunction. Recently, I think last year, as I called dentist to Anoka about seeing a lot of gum inflammation due to stress, any ulcers due to stress. Also, to me, young people come there, they all have inflamed gums in your man, and you could tell that this person is under stress. Eye problems, ulcers, just to name a few. Why would you like to do it? Who gets stressed? Yes, you may have a disposition to being stressed easily due to genetic factors. There are biological factors that can cause you to be. There are social determinants that can cause you to be stressed. Housing, access to healthcare, education, recreation, having fun, eating good food, perinatal, all these things can increase your likelihood of having stress. And before I end, I think these are some few slides about what is the top causes of stress in Canada, in the US, in Australia. And I think work is one of the top ones. Work commitment, relationships, friends, a whole lot top causes of stress. I think my time is way gone. So I'll pause here and start. This is the adverse childhood events that I spoke out to you about earlier on, about abuse, about neglect. There's one slide that explains everything about that. I think I will just, this is how stress impacts you through your biological explanation, your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, your nucleus accumbens, and let me see, and I'll just end here with prevention and management. I'll pause here, either or whoever is moderating, Mama Alexander. I said, whoever is moderating, if we can start taking the questions, and I'll talk about prevention and management of stress. This is the same thing that will also help you with your mental health. Whatever will help you mitigate and prevent stress will also help you to mitigate and have a good mental health. So I'll pause here. Any questions?
Dr. Ipachonka, wetumi yi PowerPoint na sa obi ema ne nsa so na yam.
Okay.
Nti yada doctors pa. Mental health. Ye kan ye ka sɛ ma adwene mu yadeɛ. Ɛmo so akyerɛkyerɛ mu bebree. Ɛwɔ napɔ so bebree. Obi ɛwɔ asɛmbisa a wobɛtumi abisa. Wopɛ sɛ wobisa biribi a na ama nsa so wɔ ɛso na yɛafrɛ wo, because yɛmpɛ sɛ nnipa bebree bɛ crash asɛmbisa no. Nti wowɔ biribi bisa ma wo nsa so na ebisa. Before so obiara bɛba no, mepɛ sɛ mebisa doctor. Nnipa bebree wɔ mental health a almost so nyare. Nti it's so hard sɛ wobɛtumi ama wo medication. Adɛn na ɛte saa?
So there are several modalities to managing mental health symptoms. Medication yabako, talking therapy, exercise, BP. Neding unse make about there are about 10 major groups of mental illness. No? There is a group of mental illness that actually tells you are not sick, you lack insight. Psychotic disorders, no, schizophrenia, any those disorders, no, you lack insight. You don't you unim se oyare. Mem kan sa. To so be a obi beka cho say da to say bonsam ne kasa na oni angels e kasa. That is their reality. That is their reality. The other group, it's what mechanic, obia or use substances, which is a form of mental disorders. Obia use substance, because obia or num you are no be or num. Upa kona bupa numisa kaje say he has a problem with substances and alcohol because say una any problem in boy me wan so otoguzo me sano na watchman bi we area mu no akwana bo ntumi furu gota no crowds because say wabo say una wabo me hwe umi so obefuru no da gota yin. That is the nature of the mental illness. It becomes very difficult to treat. Usa onemu bu a usa onemu bu una chia. But when it comes to mental illness, because of the lack of insight, most people, when they are experiencing mental illness, do not actually know and understand that they have it. That is why it's so important to take care of your mental health before you get sick. That is so important that we ensure, say, Obia around us is having good mental illness, because sometimes it tears the family apart. Most of you, I'm struggling to even, that is why I say we do not easily understand this and we are still studying. By little I know about mental illness, some cases, no, people do not have that insight. Depression, any anxiety, people do have insight to their condition. That is why it's easy for us to diagnose. That's why when you say easy, it is much. Yes, it's much easy for us to diagnose anxiety and depression, but psychotic symptoms, and sometimes it's difficult, and people do not seek help early. People do not seek help early. There's also stigma and biases, and so because you say you cry because of what you get what I mean. It's seen as an insult, because of our language around mental disorders, no, people do not want to even accept that diagnosis. It's the stigma and biases. Who said this? I think it was either Bill Clinton and as a former Mirifinidin. He was the Institute of Medicine, Institute of Mental Health. Mirifi, Dr. Edin. Or see, if we address our stigma and biases, we improve mental health outcomes by 50 as a 60%. That stigma and biases was more significant than taking medication. Because of stigma and biases, I know it will impact whether some people will ask question or not. Please, people can type in your question. Please feel free to type in your question. If you want to say anonymous also, please feel free to. It's not easy for us to have such conversations. Girl, say 30-year-old girl, I've been with, we attend church together. Oh, because Obusame question, is somebody with you? That's the first question. Is somebody with you? I say, no, I'm here alone. Let's talk. Every time I started giving presentations of mental health, I've had so many people connect with me outside the forum to ask me questions about needing help. And it's not easy. But please let us break this stigma. Let us break these biases and have a good discussion about mental illness. Cecilia, if I want to talk about diabetes and hypertension, we will not have any problem talking about diabetes and hypertension. Yes, Ida, you have a question.
Thank you, Dr. Bunny. So, my question in the set, is there any advice or tells you can help parents with to know, say, or more, especially their teenage or young adults are going through it? Made to me, I can use something that I've been dealing with recently as an example where you hear, parents telling you, oh, or say, oh, school, or sorry, I would that's yes, or class cry, or that you say, near kosono, and yes, say be or non so they want to go out to engage with it, like they've withdrawn themselves, and I'm there because if you know a little bit about mental health, I'm there listening. I'm like, it sounds like this person has a mental health issue or is battling with something. And I recommend, say, maybe go and have them speak with a therapist. Debbie, 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 Debbie. Or patches or boa sheda on peso beko school keke or boa on peso beko school. So is there anything, because we also know that, like what you were saying at the beginning, that mental health, especially in this time and age for young people, especially those, COVID happened, they had to do everything virtual, and then now they're coming back to, we're back to how life used to be, just navigating that. So is there any tells you can give parents to recognize when their teenage kids, young adults are going through mental health issues, and also advice on how to bring that out and have that conversation to seek the professional help that is required?
Yes, I'm going to attempt to answer this question.
Dr. Mpacho, 1 second. Mpacho, so be person will bisa question ya person in private. Send the call Dr. Hodari.
Yes, wait to me. Yes, I'll be checking. Yes.
So,
thank you. And one of the things I had a question on Busan. It's so powerful. The second, please, everybody should pause and listen to this. The second leading cause of death for people from 12 to I think 29 in the US and I think in Canada. Can somebody guess? What is the second leading cause of death? Can anybody guess? Suicide.
Yeah.
Suicide. Any cancer, any asthma. Any, you get where we're going with this? A lot of teachers are leaving the classroom because of how the mental health of the kids are in the class. I work with a psychiatrist, pediatric psychiatrist. Or see, if we take that damn gadget away, 70% of our kids will be all right. Know your kids. Please let us, when we engage and talk about mental health like we are doing now, we start breaking the silos and we start breaking the stigma. Educate yourself on what causes mental health and what are the symptoms of mental health. Either to say now, say Akolani was not. Her situation, her behavior have moved from her normal. That means there must be a trigger. There must be something going on. I say, yeah, we do not make it is I give example. It's Oko school near church idea for not being able to memorize your times table. Your church idea now who times table. There are things that we have to undo and unlearn. What Namepa Chena say? We have to do it. That's the nature of the Bible. We late. We wouldn't be here. We don't need access to internet. Because we realize that the culture requires certain things. So let us learn, let us educate, let us invite people in who can inform and teach us. Every year, yeah, taxes. Ghana, yeah, taxes. If you were born here, you're different. But those were we start doing our taxes, you get your tax back. You get some, or they take more of your money away. Whatever it is, you do your taxes. You have to. It's things that you have learned that you have to do. So let us have that awareness, be intentional about our mental health. Let us carve time within the week. If we start with dinner times at the table where we can discuss anything, everything, and have honest conversations, it becomes much easier for us to talk about mental health and other things. I know families, all of us, I think this platform is mostly Christians. All of us, sometime in a week, I hope so, that we have a family prayer meeting. We all pray together, right? We've learned, we've added our spirituality. We are spiritual beings. So are we emotional beings. We are social beings. And let us prioritize our mental health. Let us be intentional about our mental health. Let us talk about depression like you talk about sex with your kid before the kid grows. Talk about mental health before the kids grow. Talk about financial responsibility. Talk about mental health. Let us, the diabetes into talk about, hey, also I want sugar, sir. When you say you increase your risks of that, let's talk the way I talk about other illnesses. Let's talk about mental health that way. And let them give you this heads up. If you see any sleep disturbance, sleep is a huge medicine. Sleep disturbance increases your risk of stress, increases your risk of mental disorders. I can talk a whole day about sleep. It's what it will catch me. I should name 3 top things for good mental health. Sleep will be one of the top 3. Sleep is medicine, is more powerful than any psychoactive medication you take. Any psychoactive medication you take. There's other things that I can talk about. But for now, let me pause there. Make sure my message is send me who message. Okay, I have a message here. Can you please share with the slideshow mode? It's quite small to read. Okay, I'll try and do that when I come off again. How young can one be to experience stress? Can you put age number on it? Okay, I think you can experience stress right from the time you were born, and it will have an impact even before you were born. As soon as you become a zygote, you can experience stress because studies show. Mr. Mekacho say stress can be passed on from one generation to the other, right? Studies show that mothers, I'm talking about mothers, over USA, the second, I think, leading cause of perinatal mortality and morbidity is mental health. Make up perinatal, I'm talking about the whole period before conception and birth, and I think till 2 years after birth. The second leading cause of death, any sickness, is mental health. Please don't play with it. How young can you be to experience mental health? You don't have to have it to be in tune with your body to say to me and we're experiencing stress. No. You can experience stress before you can even talk or blink. Say umame, usha umami yim. Your dad abused your mom. Physically, emotionally, it will have an impact on you. So you are experiencing stress. Am I making sense? Liliani, if I hope I pronounced your name well. If I did not, please forgive me and let me know whether I have answered your question. Any other question? Any other question? I see some direct messages. Yes, so you can send me direct message and I'll get it and I'll respond to it. Any other question?
Well, Dr. Mpasa, me can be
Yes,
making me
please.
be
Yes, Pacho.
Ayi Nansenya obi ayini no omu wa US omu ba 20 years omu esora anopa na wahange ne ho ono ane ewu na papa ne si ne rem fit da e won life mu se oyi ne ba na free soro pa to for makwesi no o chire na omu ko ni social media and omu say he was going through depression but they didn't know ena ade ba ku nso a Emma young people no so cause stress mu a mate afi nipa bebre ho ogbo ha no ma ne ba no oko school na wasi school na oko no ye do oko no wo kwa ba ye doctor wo kwa ba ye police officer akra no so mpe mate afi nipa bebre ho enti nkola ne timi go through so stress on ma akla na decide ade a ope parents ne dey share o mutrimu it gives them so much stress. Intimate stress out from steady ubane ni komo busa na de opese woye. The opese woye ni support no man because you say obi anye taxi driver nka doctor no wo call meeting no wo through airport nka winya taxi mfa nko hotel. Enti support ade a ubane pese woye. E my fa stress mu nkwala na so munya ade a wo pese obetimi aye. Eni say obi ba 20 years omu ade no hanging ne ho woni den enti kakra metimi e de aboa
Auntie Abeta, I wish I can give so many examples. You see, it is so rampant. Let me even add this. 1 in 2 adults are lonely, which brings it to about 50% of adults are lonely. And I know loneliness causes its own stress and a whole lot of health and mental health issues. When it comes to the young people, 60% from statistics are lonely. Or if you, he's got friends, but they are still lonely. And we know loneliness increases your risk of suicide, increases your risk of depression. You know what? I'm going to share my slides again. This time I'm going to try and see whether I can do a better job at sharing my slides. Oh, that's the problem. Okay, let me try again. I'm going to share because I would like to give you the clinical signs of depression because most people with who die by suicide usually have got depressive symptoms before suicide. And there are 2 things when I'm assessing for suicide. There are 2 things I'm looking for: hopelessness and helplessness. There are other clinical signs of suicide, but if I can get hopelessness and helplessness, I know I'm in a good place. And I'll talk about what hopelessness is and what helplessness is. There are tools to assess for suicide. There are Columbia screeners in Yoma, which me use to assess for for suicide. But I think they usually look at the whole picture. They look at the risk factors and a whole lot of things. But there are things that I would like you to think about in terms of hopelessness and helplessness. Let me see whether I can share my screen again. And somebody emailed me and said he could not see my slides well because I have it too small. Let me see whether I can do a better job at this because yeah, I don't know. It is not. I mean, say meet me. Yeah. How does it look?
I think if you go into presentation mode, it would be a bit larger.
Yeah.
You are in speaker mode, so it's a bit.
Then I need help with it.
Just go back to the slide and click on the presentation mode. Like at the top, there's something that will say slideshow. So after autosave, the back button, there's something, and then there's something like a screen with, yeah. and then it should
Okay.
make it bigger for us to see.
Let me see whether I can figure this out. Me who? Debbie.
Oh, okay. Share Biom. Let me walk you through.
Okay.
There's
If
something
I
which
go to
looks like
share,
yeah. If you share, and then I
yeah.
can see, and then I'll show you where it is.
Okay, I'm sharing now.
Okay, so you see where autosave is at the top, and then there's on, and then there's that back button, and
Okay,
then there's like
present or
the
share.
present mode. So if you put on present mode, which is like a small TV with something in the middle. So it's after autosave, it's like second, third, fourth, kind of like the fifth icon. Maybe you are not there. Like go to your actual presentation at the top.
At the top here.
Yeah, do you see on top of the file, you see autosave, right? And go to
Oh
slide.
yeah.
Yeah, you can, yes.
Is it better? Because I'm there now and I'm not.
Yeah, it's like you're in presenter mode. So
yeah. Can you see much better?
yeah, I can see okay.
Okay, let me quickly talk about. I just want to stress on one thing. That's depression. These are the clinical signs of depression. I'm just going to walk through. I think I'll work on my font much better. But these are the clinical signs of feeling of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, or hopelessness. Hopelessness is a big thing. Hopelessness is my situation is so bad, nobody can help me. No, my situation is so bad, I cannot help myself. That's hopelessness. I cannot help myself. My life is empty. There's no point living. Other symptoms. These are the core symptoms we are assessing for when you have depression. If you have 5 or so of this for a period of 2 weeks, we can clinically give you, but it's a clinical judgment. That's why I don't want to talk about diagnosis, because people start diagnosing people or diagnosing themselves. Okay. Angry outbursts, irritability or frustration, even over small matters, loss of interest or pleasure in most or normal activities such as sex, hobbies, sports. That is where the anhedonia comes from. Sleep disturbances, including insomnia or sleeping too much. Tiredness and lack of energy. So even after small tasks, you don't know what break occur. Yes, that is, I say it's a clinical because sometimes some physical illnesses can cause you to have that weakness. Low hemoglobin, any other things can make you, so they have to make sure your lab test now are clear of all those things before that diagnosis is put on you. I'll say disturbed appetite rather than reduced. Yes, some people have reduced appetites, weight loss, increased cravings for food, and weight gain. Anxiety, agitation, or restlessness. Slowed thinking, speaking, or speaking or body movement. Feelings of worthlessness. This is where the helplessness comes in. And let me talk about helplessness. My situation is so bad, nobody can help me. I should just die. Trouble thinking, concentrating, making decisions, remembering, frequent and reoccurring thoughts of death. Suicidality is part of a symptomology for depression. Okay, let me go back up and start talking about ways to mitigate stress before I leave. I'll start with this: exercise. Listen, the top 3 things for me for mitigating and having good mental health, medication is not on the top 3. Food is not on the top 3. Prayer is a constant. So I don't think you see prayer on. Prayer is a constant because I believe in the power of God. I believe the power of the Holy Spirit. I believe you can be healed of your depression. I believe your mental health symptoms can be done by praying. But if you ask me 3 things to prioritize for your healing, exercise. Exercise and physical activity is more effective than any antidepressant. That's by German research. I'm not we're making things up. And how much exercise do you need? I will start with 30 minutes, at least 4 times a week. 30 minutes of good cardio, things that will pump your heart, your circulation. And yes, for 30 minutes, at least 4 times a week. If you can do more, better. Sleep, and that. And you can sleep and wake up feeling tired. You've not slept. Good sleep hygiene. What do I mean? There are things, take that gadget out of your bedroom. I don't know why people have TVs in their bedroom. Unless maybe, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. The brain takes about an hour and a half to shut down after looking at your screen. Why do our kids use computer till 2 minutes before they sleep? And they have gadgets in their room. Take all gadgets in their room. Their room should be a space for sleep. Respect sleep. I'm not making it up. WHO. Now, where working at night is considered a carcinogen. But the night time you are not getting the desired sleep. It increases your risk of cancers. I wish I could spend the whole rest of the time talking about sleep. Sleep is medicine. I think it's a 6-year that said sleep is medicine. Go and worship it. Healthy relationships. Relationships are expensive. It takes time, it takes money to cultivate good relationships. And it's not just relationships at home, relationships at school, relationship at work. We spend a good chunk of our lives at work and at school. Make that place a place that you would like to dwell in. Cultivate that habit. And they are being bullied at school. Take it serious. Follow it up. Make sure their school is a place that will support their growth. Could you imagine living in a lion's den? The stress and how the body will produce. It's just a matter, it's a recipe for disaster. I wish I could talk about this order. Healthy relationship. Learn to forgive. Gratitude is also a medicine. Doing charity, volunteering, bringing somebody to such talks. Music is medicine. If I have my way here, you see I have a guitar in my office. Breathing. I didn't know breathing was medicine till I met a Tai Chi master. I didn't know I was not even breathing. Google, YouTube now, box breathing. You hold your breath for 4 or 5 seconds, you release it, do it a couple of times. I'm telling you, that is medicine. I list here nutrition. Nutrition, because the nutrition, but it is not what you eat alone that kills you. It is what eats you that kills you. The good old fruit, vegetables, and this thing is very important. And we are so focused on what to eat and say we don't also think about the time we eat and the quantity we eat. So fruits and vegetables, Beyond Beat Burger 6. Now we're in Anajo 12 as a 10. You eat vegetarian, you eat good food, but the timing and the quantity is not right. Take time to eat healthy. It is not just the vegetables that you are eating. It is the timing, the quantity of, the quality of your food that you are eating. Sexual intimacy. It's very important. We are sexual beings. People make it feel, especially the married couples around us. We don't talk about it. I know people whose depression have been better by sexual intimacy. And sometimes for men, sexual intimacy is another thing. For women, sexual intimacy means just having a hug. They don't want anything more. Just a hug. Just some inside. I don't know. They will take sexual intimacy. It must be beyond that. Yes, work with your partner on that. Your spouse on that. Okay, let me move on. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is medicine. Forgiveness is medicine. Sometimes you gotta let go. One of my really worldly songs, I'm a pepper. I make up worldly songs because any hymn book is let it go, let it go. Just let it go. Just let it go. Forgive. I lift here spirituality. Our spirituality is very important. Meditation, trusting God. In all this, God can heal. Temperance. Exercise is good. Food is good. Too much of it is not okay. So in everything, in moderation. In that kakra, aduane kakra, exercise kakra, intimacy kakra, everything must be balanced. We don't, people work, 6 months as of a holiday. Pace yourself. Ninyaka temperance, no. That's why we have Sabbath every week. We don't have Sabbath. Yes, there was 7-year Sabbaths in the Bible, but don't wait 3 months before you take a holiday. Pace yourself. Laughter is another medicine. And if you doubt it, read a book by Norman Cousins. It's called, the title of the book is An Anatomy of an Illness, or Anatomy of an Illness. This was a guy who was given 6 months to live. He was in bed, bedridden. I think ankylosing meningitis, I said, and he loved himself. I started saw Charlie Chaplin movies, and he loved himself to wellness. Laughter is a good medicine. You just imagine, after a good body laugh, you feel so good. The last thing I put here is sometimes you need professional help. These talks are good, but sometimes please seek professional help. Psychotherapy can help you. Medication can help you, especially when you're in the acute phase. I'll pause here and take further questions. Pacho, any other question? Nature came chat. So,
I
yeah.
have well, I'll say one or two. You were talking about the youth and the children, and even the fact that some adults grew up, they have some PTSD, I mean, trauma because of what happened when they were younger. And see, I know, say in our culture and even back home, like you hear or people just getting insulted, especially if you are a child, teachers, those kind of things. When we are engaging with our kids, I know sometimes they will do things that really make you frustrated and all those kind of things, but how can we, I mean, deal with them, engage with them such that we are not saying some of these things that will maybe impact them down the line, because it becomes maybe always like common, even Uko Ghana Christ, like radio, people are just insulting each other here and there. And sometimes when I think back, I'm like, why were some of these words, if it will be okra, but that those kind of pronouncements, and how does it impact the case? Sometimes it might seem that they are just listening, just going, but what can we do to avoid some of these things so it doesn't impact them down the road? Because some of them, they will not talk or do any sign, even for you to know it's impacting them, or
I think it starts with the awareness, the education. The Nyoma Piana Yinim. So that there are a lot of things that we didn't know that we've learned. So we have to put into practice. We have to educate ourselves, and we have to be intentional about what we do. COVID taught us we have to wash our hands every time we come, and we have to wash our hands very well with soap. There are things that you can use alcohol wipe to do. There are things that before COVID, how many times were we using alcohol sanitizers or sanitizers? But we learned it. So now that we know that every voice, anything that comes out of our mouth can care somebody, can bless somebody, can make somebody happy, can make somebody sad, we have to be intentional about the words that comes out of our mouth. It is people who swear. No, there are some people who swear. Like every word that comes out of their mouth must start with an S and F or something. Recently, I was talking to a colleague and he said, I guess you're a Christian. I've never heard you swear. And I'm intentional of making sure I do not have to tell you I'm a Christian. You must know by the way I live. Okay. Because we must intentional, we must work. Who said sometimes you are means that with me what UK do time them tie Burger King pa. And there's something about fast foods. It's so addictive. Always want to eat that dirty chicken, that dirty cow, or whatever you want to eat. Yeah. It's an acquired taste. Yeah, woman, go feeding bottle. So I have to be intentional about making sure I don't drive through there. I don't do this so I can go off it. That is the nature I want us to approach the words that come out of our mouth. Because it is not just what you eat that goes inside that destroys us. It's the things that come out of it. If you check with people who have been bullied, most of the bullying is not physical bullying. It's the name calling. It's the non-verbal. All the friends were talking, they were having discussion. As soon as you got there, they kept quiet. They decided not to talk again. Or they started giggling. You couldn't so. You don't want to be there. Could you imagine you just come into the bus, no be action, and all of them keep quiet? You enter the school bus. That's bullying. You start wondering what is wrong with me. Then I'm bibi me ho bon and I say, why does everybody want to treat me different? Why are they treating me this way? It goes to the question that somebody just okay, I'll talk about it, but please, let's pay attention to this. It makes a huge difference. There are adults at work who are being bullied by you need a sikano. You are a lot of people are sick. I know people who are sick to the core because of, and sometimes we bring it home. Sometimes in colony behaviors now, it's in response to what they are experiencing out of the home. Some of the kids spend a lot of time on the internet because they do not, they want to drown away their sadness. At least through internet now, people will not see the real him and people will like you for your presence. And there are some horrible people too on the internet. It's killing all of us. You spend the whole evening, 24, scrolling. WhatsApp, WhatsApp, TikTok. Hey, TikTok can take 2 hours of your day before you blink. There are short videos that captures your attention. For a moment, you forget about where you are, what you are doing. You know you have work to do. You want to scrolling the whole day. Let me respond to a question that somebody asked. Can you talk a little about ADHD, how it affects women, and how to recognize when you are going through it? So attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder and how it affects women. Yes, ADHD is considered a neurodevelopmental disorder. But it's usually not picked up by most people. Some people get to know about their diagnosis later on in life. I believe stress plays a huge role in that. Sometimes you may have it in your early ages and may never show up. Clinical symptoms may not show up. It's the lack of attention, it's the lack of ability to pay focus, it's the lack of the need to satisfy, to be socially accepted and read social, a whole lot of, it's really packed. The symptoms is packed and even having neurological developmental test to get the diagnosis takes about a year. I don't know, to get that test. How does it affect women? I personally think Black women are disproportionately stressed. Remember now, remember there's no pressure to look a certain way. I have women are thinking about their head, their outlook, you have a whole lot of stresses that can play and easily make you feel like you have got ADHD. I'm not here to diagnose. How can I talk a little bit about and how do you recognize? Just know yourself. Know the common symptoms of ADHD. Mitigate your stress and you will feel better. I have one hand raised, and I think this will be the last question. I've run out of time. Yes.
Okay, my question is mental health now. Does it differ from where you are, like geographically, you know? Is it because the minimum say Ghana there, but then it be no way you know number. So does that mean say geographically, you know, those in Ghana, their mental health issue is different from Iwo Krum Hanana? That's it.
Thank you. So in Uzemeka, I said there are cultural contexts to mental disorders. To say Ghana society, no, people are not mentally well, but we are accommodating. Meaning, so anabodam ni be the driver directed traffic. Labone. Okay. There is also some this mental health disorders that are specific to certain geographical locations. Ghana depression or just this last week I was talking to, and let me see, I was talking to somebody that I did not know. Who was he a friend of Pearl, really gone. Into more really gone wahanum no see I think 2000. And we were talking about campus SD, and he mentioned a very good elder in the church also that later on I hear he died. I don't know, it's unconfirmed. He died by suicide. But people have so Obika says sometimes ignorance is bliss. There are people who are depressed, but they don't know they are depressed, and we do not know that they are depressed. So it does exist. Yes, when you talk about whether there are certain areas that have got certain unique mental health disorders, yes, or seasonal affective disorders. And it's usually depressive symptoms based on the lack of the long nights and short days. Enti say na medru abonte na ade asatum. It causes, and young as Black people, there are certain people who actually are recommend taking vitamin D very regularly around this time. It can help mitigate your depressive symptoms. I will strongly advise you to take vitamin D. I do take sometimes Refi, but I do take vitamin D from time to time. So yes, there is some geographical association with some mental disorders. And lastly, is OCD a mental disorder? Yes, the whole thing is obsessive compulsive disorder. And you can have OCD over anything. Some everyday accounting, everyday cleaning, everyday washing, everyday checking. There's so many. It is when it on its own, checking cell door is a natural tendency. But when it becomes overwhelming, say one feel say one check your door. Sometimes PFF. Feel say what to garage. I feel say on two. I feel say on two. Then the whole day you perseverate over it. That is getting clinical. What to move on. Okay. What to move. Into more chan no check it. No, why late to him say or late so it has implication on the employment, but he cannot help it. He has to check the door and make sure it is closed. When it starts impacting your daily activities of daily, it impacts your sleep, it impacts your anxiety, it impacts your present. That is when it becomes I think it becomes a mental disorder. So OCD is a mental health disorder. There are various types of mental disorders. Auntie Abeta, over to you.
Yo, Dr. Yadasi Bebre, ena asamba kwa meka support to Dr. Dienu. Ghana obi yare a sika obakwa akoti a hospital nti onko check it. Enipa bebre ewo krom hanom a wo mental issues a wo fa wo madru de bia wo functioning good. Wo ye wo adwuma kama. Ba Ghana onko hospital. Office oni sika. Enti wo mbetna hospital na ye west no apanto megu. Krom han so de call hospital symptoms na doctor no be diagnose no amane dru enipa bebre ye adwuma offices de dru so ofa na dru into function good with me na adwuma ba Ghana no onko into ebeye west na wapantum egu em say difference kakra so a
lastly, there's a lot of behaviors which I know say Ghana mental disorders, but Jenny and friend mental disorder. Well, I'm saying a lack of and if you don't know any better, it's just like skin cancer. My name is Bagel, like we were having a debate about skin cancer, and I make a chance say skin cancer adults in Ghana. And it's not because skin cancer adults. We are now getting better at diagnosing and understanding. We've always had the sun. Should we use sunscreen? That's another topic. But I feel I did not answer the question on hyperactivity well. These are some of the common symptoms of hyperactivity and ADHD. Is being unable to sit still, especially in calm or quiet surroundings. Able to just relax, constantly fidgeting, waiting for your turn. These are also signs that actually I see with stress. Being unable to concentrate on tasks, excessive physical movement, excessive talking, being unable to wait for your turn, acting without thinking, interrupting conversations. These are also signs of when somebody is stressed out. You all kasa man in kasa in cry. Sister, Inyaba, Auntie Abeta, Pacho, Ponye. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present.
Dr. Yadasi Bebre, em said the kind of addition when you 1 hour some. Because say I'm out for Mr. questions now. Questions never by my time no sir. Into be another time no yebema long robe na obi at me. Ebisa asemti. Epa mo chow me who say pastor was so. Inti saying pastor beti me a bompire my na ye di bibi akwa ye. But before then, doctor, wait there, give me 1 second. And go for bebre no monsa, omonum cigarette, because they think that they are stressed. Is it true or not? Where the answer and me pen yes or no near na pastor mumpire my.
Yes, to mask their symptoms, but it doesn't give you true relief. It's all more inside that. Yes, it can help you initially, but in long run, you are not sleeping well. There are stages of sleep, REM. And any research scientist, neuroscientist will tell you, taking any substance to help you sleep, you are still not getting quality sleep. I know people then will be asking me, what about melatonin and other things that you can help you sleep? Those are medications, but taking recreational substances to help you sleep is not a healthy choice.
Yeah, that's the pastor. Yeah, that's the doctor. Pastor a patch of bumpire my na enkoda. Another time you bet was.
Thank you.
Yamishra mupi Dr. Bonnie, Yamishra pi. So over church, we is a care part 2 pa. See, Mama Dr. Bonnie part 2 my na abua ye pa pacho mama yamon paye. Ina kopon so da be ni mfama wo se. And wa church when am akwa Bonnie so church ye. Adwiri mu hawa eba ya brabom ni asetena mu ne eniema ye kyerɛ sɛ ya wa adwiri mu hawa. I affected across the board. Wa sɔre no mo nso pa. Ti mu pinu mo ho eba sɔre science ani ma doctor kan ho asɛm nti sɛ mo kra ye tekra na ye ntehwe sanse ya adwene no ye troubled ne de ba sɔre dem ye kofie nso asa. Ti sɛro sɛ ye hia honhom mu sɛ the doctor kan ye no sɛ empabo ye adwuma wo saa te bia we mu nso te sɛro pi sɛ fa sake kan ye nyina ye ne ye manom besim panyimfo so. dansidie edi no ha na se neme bi asisi a ya reho se bi no mutimi ye manum bitimi sha comfort dem ne niam ahodo ekoso a ha ye Awurade wei areho pa nso da wase ma doctor pa ho ntoma se yen de bebo ye ne ankosa te bia ya reho sem se te seropi se ma ye nyina ye tie yi Awurade boy ne ntimi ne sunku ma fe yemfa nkyerɛkyerɛ ye nuan mo mo so ametie bi no mu ne mo hwe fe seropi se obitima makwan na yetime asan tie bi mu aka ho na ye fe yetime koso nya ne mudie wo saa ebia yi so yesre na women ministry tumedi omudie wo potem ha Awurade wakoso ama na ye kese na fe yesre opi se hyira yi nyina wo kyena ho sisi da yentime sisi ho na de yatie yi yenko ye ho adwuma na ye ba sori yetime asan tie sema wakoma pani adwuma pam esansa do sa keka ye nyina na oyi hawo ne ama ne hunu nyina ho wo Calvary na mo Yesu Kristo di monti tie sere opi se hyira doctor ne nabusua ne hyira safoma na kan nyina ye ne aka nyina so ye bisa wo nyina wo Yesu di mo anadwe ma ye napa ye sore ya dawase wo Yesu di monti amen.
Amen. Amen. Women's
Okay.
Ministry, thank you so